Please go to my website signsoftheend.net to view the full 90-minute version of this update. This is the weekly news update for Friday, March the 25th. I apologize that today is already Monday when I'm posting it. I've had a very busy week, so I was not able to get it out in time. This week's headlines: nuclear meltdown in Japan, war against Libya, more unrest in the Middle East, earthquake in Burma, and also one in Japan today, U.S. floods, storms, and tornadoes, and the food crisis worsens. Hello and welcome. This is Paul Sandhu from signsoftheend.net. Greetings in the name of our precious Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, whose coming we look for in the days ahead. These news updates are provided for the purpose of comparing current events to biblical prophecies to see if we are living in the days of the fulfillment of the end of the world prophecies, or that we may soon witness the fulfillment of such prophecies. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of end of the world prophecies in the Bible, and anyone that knows their Bible should know for sure as these prophecies are being fulfilled. The first part of this update, in my understanding, we are close to that time but not quite there yet. The first part of this update is a special report on the catastrophe in Japan, which I believe is the most cataclysmic event that has been visited upon our world in 1,000 years. The problem is not merely the devastation caused by the earthquake and tsunami, but rather the fallout from the nuclear disaster that is far from over. Signs of the end of the world. The end of the present world is as certain as, or even more certain than, the fact that the sun will rise tomorrow. For those who believe in the God of the Bible, He has given unmistakable signs. Excuse me. Just having a little bit of problem with my computer. Okay, so go back to this topic of the signs of the end of the world. The end of this present world is as certain as, or even more certain than, the fact that the sun will rise tomorrow. For those who believe in the God of the Bible, He has given them unmistakable signs that will prove that the end of the world is imminent. The signs that will transpire in the early stages of the end of the world may be divided into 4 categories, based on Matthew 24:7 and other scriptures. And I will quickly read Matthew 24:7, which tells us that nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. So these 4 categories are warfare, famines, pestilences or pandemics, and earthquakes, and related disasters that stem from earthquakes such as the tsunami in Japan. In current events, I watch for signs that prove that the world is headed for major disasters in all of the above categories. It is only when every part of the world is being inflicted by one or more such catastrophes, be it war or famines or pandemics or earthquakes, and related disasters such as tsunamis, and tens of millions of people are dying as a result of such disasters, can it be concluded that the biblical end of the world has begun. So although we've had earthquakes and diseases and famines, etc., all throughout history, there will come a time when these events will be transpiring in every nation all across the world, and it will result in literally billions of people dying in a very short period of time. I believe we are only months away from the beginning of this prophesied end. Okay, we are not quite there yet, but we're getting there very, very soon. So the top story this week continues to be the disaster in Japan, although CNN and other media have us focused on this war in Libya. But this is the major crisis in the world today. To reiterate, Japan was struck by an earthquake and tsunami on March the 11th of this year. It was a magnitude 9.0 earthquake, and more than 10,000 people have been declared to be dead. There are some 30,000 people now that are missing. 500,000 people have been displaced from their homes. And 4 nuclear reactors have been destroyed, with the potential for 2 more being destroyed as a result of what's going on in these 4. At least one of these is in a state of catastrophic meltdown, and radiation is now being detected across the northern hemisphere. The problem is not the level of radiation right now, say in the United States or in Europe or other places in the world other than the immediate vicinity in Japan, but the problem is that if this problem continues for months, as they are saying that it will, then this radiation will build up all across the northern hemisphere anyhow, and it will have long-lasting health effects for a large part of the northern hemisphere, and certainly catastrophic effect for the people in Japan, including Tokyo. So BBC and some other news agencies reported yesterday that the radiation levels are 10 million times normal at Fukushima plant, and they have later corrected that to say it wasn't 10 million. So I mean, it was 10,000 or something like that, but there's been many conflicting reports that have come out of there, so it's hard to determine what the facts are. But just from all the news reports that have been put out there, it can be surmised that the situation is very, very grave. The Japanese Prime Minister, as a matter of fact, used that very terminology when he said that the situation is very grave and serious. And he goes on that he sounded a pessimistic note. He said the situation at the Fukushima Daiichi power plant is still very grave and serious, and we are not in a position where we can be optimistic. So that just tells you, it's they're not coming out and saying that this is like an end of the world type scenario happening in Japan. So you could say at least an end of Japan, maybe not the end of the world, but it is that serious, and therefore they have to couch this in such terms that we have to dig through what's being said to get to the real message. And the message is there's no reason for them to be optimistic, so they have just given up that this is going to, keep on deteriorating. Now, this does raise some questions, which I will ask a little bit later. And again, this report that came out that workers are exposed to 10,000 times more radiation. See, now with 10,000 times normal radiation, how can the experts here in North America on CNN, etc., keep telling us, don't worry, be happy, that it's just, don't worry, it's just a little bit of radiation, it'll go away, it won't cause any problems. How is it possible that all that radiation is limited to the immediate region only? There's that 20-kilometer, area that needs to be, that's really bad, everything else is safe. Not possible. See, how is it possible that all that radiation is limited to the immediate region only and not be and won't be blown all over Japan and ultimately around the world? And also the radioactivity is rising in the sea nearby, which makes total sense. They've been pumping seawater into it to try and cool these reactors down. And then, of course, the seawater that's being pumped also has to be flushed out and sent somewhere. And where does it go? It's not going into the ground. It's going back into the sea. So radiation levels are going quite drastic. So what that, of course, causes is Japan being a major fishing nation, etc. These oceans themselves are going to get contaminated. Eventually, they already have been to a great extent, but this certainly does not help matters. In this case, the only one solution is the Chernobyl solution. In Chernobyl, what they did was they just buried it in concrete. They built a concrete tomb around that thing, and they did it rapidly. I think this should have been done from the very day this problem was started. The international community should have jumped in and taken control of it, and they should have dealt with this problem rather than chasing off another meaningless war. It is not a meaningless war, but another unjustified war against Libya. Okay, so where is this Chernobyl solution? I actually saw on CNN yesterday some professor or somebody was on there, and that's what he said. He said ultimately that's what's going to have to be done. You will see these huge concrete mounds on top of these reactors, and that's what'll needs to be done. So why is it not being done is the question. Why are they contaminating the whole world, especially the northern hemisphere, before they apply the solution? Very strange times we are living in indeed. Here's a report from Russia today, which was talking about the radioactivity in that area now. Please give it a listen. It's a short report.
Well, radiation levels in the sea near Japan's Fukushima nuclear plant have spiked to more than 1,000 times the norm. It's been over 2 weeks now since the devastating earthquake and tsunami which caused the accident at the facility. The official death toll from the disaster stands at over 10,000 people, with many more missing or homeless. Emergency teams are still struggling to control the situation at the stricken Fukushima nuclear plant. Several workers sustained radiation burns while installing cables as part of efforts to restore the critical cooling systems. Nuclear energy experts say the damage to the site is having a dangerous effect on the environment and on people's health.
I think it's catastrophic. I think that the narrative that we've had for the last week or so, which is that we're trying to fix the problem or get it under control, is misleading. I think that there's evidence of radiation having entered the environment in large amounts. It's turning up in lots of places, in water and food It's even being detected far away. What this could mean is that there is really a significant entry of radiation going on into the environment right now, and that there doesn't appear to be any halt to it in the near future. So that's very catastrophic. This is not something that is a situation that may get out of control. This is a situation that is having a catastrophic impact currently already. I would say it's significantly dangerous. There's been high levels of radiation detected out at the 20-kilometer limit already. And what you have when you have radiation levels of that level is that in a week or two, you'll have people that are experiencing the radiation exposure of nuclear plant workers, over the course of their career. And these are people in a situation where there's been an earthquake, there's been a tsunami, there's a shortage of food, there's a shortage of water, so their health is already stressed, their bodies are already stressed. They may not be in heated homes at night, they may not be getting electricity, so the impact of these exposures will be even larger. To receive in the course of a week or two the exposures that nuclear plant workers receive in their entire lives is rather dire, and these people should not be allowed to remain in such an exposure area.
So that was the report from Russia today. As you can hear the man, he said that this high levels are being detected far away from the plant, and Tokyo is not that far away. Tokyo is the largest, most densely populated metropolitan area in the whole world. And how is it possible that this radiation, the amount that's coming out of these plants, is not going to have a devastating effect on Tokyo and all of Japan? I don't understand how that's possible. So this is the world we live in, where the powers that be, the people that run the planet, they are more concerned with how they appear in public, etc., rather than being concerned with the health and the welfare of the inhabitants of this planet. Yes. So Tokyo could potentially become.
We want to turn right to physicist Michio Kaku this morning. Dr. Kaku, great to have you. And you heard just moments ago the Prime Minister calling this breach grave and serious. And as you know, Doctor, I was in Japan for days, and rarely did the Prime Minister come out in this way, apologizing and using those words. What does this tell you?
This is huge. For the first time, they're using that dreaded word breach, meaning uncontrolled release of radiation into the environment. And remember that Unit 3, which is suspected to have the breach, contains plutonium. Plutonium is the most toxic chemical known to science. A speck of plutonium, a millionth of a gram, could cause cancer if it's ingested. And so this has to be looked at very carefully, because if there is a full abandonment of the reactor site, if they abandon ship, we could be in free fall.
And even before we heard those words used by the Prime Minister, Doctor, we saw this in a Tokyo newspaper this morning, the headline that Japan's own Nuclear Safety Committee is thinking about upping the level here. Let's take a look at these numbers. 3 Mile Island in this country, we all know, was a level 5. Chernobyl was a level 7. That's the highest possible. And now Japan considering moving this up to a 6.
Well, the utility is the laughing stock within scientific circles, because obviously this accident has exceeded 3 Mile Island. At 3 Mile Island, we had one reactor sustaining perhaps 90% core damage, but very little escaped into the environment. There was no breach. Here we have 3 raging meltdowns in progress, 1 spent fuel pond open to the air, hydrogen gas explosions, any one of which already exceeds 3 Mile Island.
And Dr.
So
Kaku,
obviously we should be level 6.
Level 6, you point out, and we saw those eerie images just yesterday morning here of the ghost towns created near the Fukushima plant. I mean, are we looking at a potential Chernobyl situation where an entire region of Japan would be empty for years to come?
Let's hope not. Let's hope they bring it under control. But if it goes to a full-scale evacuation of all personnel, it means that firefighters are no longer putting water onto the cores. That's the only thing preventing a full-scale meltdown at 3 reactor sites. Once they evacuate, then we pass the point of no return. Meltdowns are inevitable at 3 reactor sites, leading to a tragedy far beyond that of Chernobyl, creating permanent dead zones in Japan.
All right, Dr. Kaku leading us through this day by day. We appreciate it again this morning on now 2 weeks to the day since this earthquake and tsunami. Dr. Kaku, thanks.